Hi, everybody, and welcome to class. I'm sorry I'm just here in Vancouver right now at my commuter place and friend's place, just halfway through work here on the 1st of December. And I haven't recorded for about a little bit, for maybe a week and a half or so. I'm just sort of putting all my flying in one sort of big chunk to get everything done so I have time off for Christmas to visit my family in the United States. So I'm just really tired over the last little bit. Like I've been to turnaround trip to Mexico, then Tokyo, and then Brisbane, Australia. I was just in Toronto. Now I go to London and I have to leave in a couple hours. Then I'm scheduled to go to Thailand and then Australia again. So it's just great. So I've tried to record a couple times on my layovers, but I was just so tired. And last night I got back from Toronto. I fell fast asleep at like 8:30 at night. Actually, this morning when I woke up, I found my book in my bed with me. Like, it's tired when you fall asleep with the book in the bed with you. So anyhow, I just like to sort of, I don't want to fall too far behind here with our class on time and cutters. I just wanted to be able to, I've got a little bit of time just before I head out to the UK. So I just wanted to record a class for everybody. And this class is going to be on conceptuality and emptiness, or how do we, have a direct perception of emptiness from a concept of emptiness. So it's a really good class. There's a lot here. I think part of the reason I've had a hard time recording this is that it was like, there's a lot of material here. And I just was a couple times, I was like, oh man, I'm so tired. And I was just wanted to sort of go the distance with this and make sure that the quality was really good. And so anyhow, here we are. So get started at this right away. And thanks for coming in. Thanks for watching this video. And hope this helps with everyone's understanding and practice of moving towards a direct perception of emptiness and liberation into nirvana. Okay, starting with the Heart Sutra. Homage to perfection, wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I've heard, at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgir and Mass Vulture's Mountain, together assembly of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. That time also, Superior Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of the great beings, looking perfectly at the process of profound perfection wisdom, looking perfectly at the five aggregates being empty and inherent existence. Then through the power of Buddha, then Shariputra said to Superior Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of the great being, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to engage in the process of profound perfection wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Superior Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of the great being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently looking perfectly and correctly at the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is none other than form. Form is not other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, having no characteristics. They're not produced and do not cease. They have no defilement, no separation from defilement. They have no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tactile object, no phenomenon. There is no I element, so forth up to no mentality element, also up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, no exhaustion of ignorance, and so forth up to no aging and death, no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, there is no suffering, origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there's no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear. Passing on or beyond perversity, they attain in that final nirvana. Also, all Buddhas reside perfectly in the three times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, became manifest, complete Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, unsurpassed mantra, the equal to the unequal mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it's not false, should be known as the truth. The mantra of perfection wisdom is proclaimed, Tayata Om Gata Gata Paragata Parasamgati Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, bodhisattva great being should train the profound perfection wisdom like this. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and said to Superior Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva the great being, that he'd spoken well. Good, O son, and is like that, since it's like that just as you have revealed, in that way the profound perfection wisdom should be practiced, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, Superior Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, and the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, and spirits, were delighted and highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed One. Just going to recite just a few mantras here, Gati mantras for us to have it just sort of get the energy of emptiness here with us. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. So out of emptiness here, let's visualize ourselves seated in a wide open space, ground like lapis lazuli, beautiful blue cloudless sky above us. Ourselves surrounded by all sentient beings without exception. So our mother on our right, mother on our left, pardon me, father on our right, people we love the most, support behind us, and people we like the least or have issues or karmic debts with in front of us as objects of care and compassion. And moving out concentric circles from there, we can have all people, human beings from all over the world, different backgrounds, animals from all the different ecosystems here on Earth, countless spirit beings from the spirit world, for all the different sort of spiritual planes and so forth, and celestial beings, gods, demigods, and countless beings in lower states of rebirth, hungry ghost beings and hell beings. So we're all here together in sort of a big family here. And let's visualize in the sky above us, beautiful Buddhist Shakyamuni, just as sort of this continuing on how we've been doing the merit field for our Diamond Cutter course. Buddhist Shakyamuni being out of golden energy with 3 robes of a monk. And he has at his heart, so he's got 3 robes of monk, in a pure golden energy. He's got a begging bowl for the soul nectar in his left hand and right hand touching the earth with the subdued mudra. And at his heart is Vajradhara and Vajradhatushvari, his higher Sambhogakaya form. beautiful blue energy, and they're in sexual embrace, wearing crowns and so forth. Beautiful jewelry and silks, and they have a blue hum letter between them at heart level. So Buddha Shakyamuni is in the sky like a beautiful sun here, radiating golden light out. And we do refuge in bodhicitta. And all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Motivation here, bodhicitta. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, when we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, when we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, when we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Now doing the four immeasurables of generating love, compassion, joy, and equanimity in our hearts here. May everyone be happy. May everyone be free from misery. May no one ever be separated from their happiness. And may everyone have equanimity, free from hatred and attachment. And just for a moment, you can just visualize beautiful golden light coming from the hearts of Vajradhara and Vajradhara, that Buddha's heart, out like sunlight into us. Again, it is helping us sort of develop a stronger refuge in the three jewels. Setting our motivation is great compassion with the awakening mind. And we can just feel that sending outwards from us is just like a fountain coming into us and then radiating out sort of 360 degrees, golden energy of the four immeasurables, just sharing with all the beings around us love, which means wanting everybody to be happy, compassion, wanting them to be free from suffering and misery, joy, in this case, the joy of nirvana, sort of a joyless suffering. And we can also, I always sort of read into it a little bit of the Nietzsche or Spinoza's definition of joy being sort of like a positive power, positive creativity, owning your spiritual power, to manifest that outwards as positive energy with all beings. And equanimity, sort of beyond hope and fear, beyond attachment and aversion, and just sort of having a middle way here. So for us, just feel that equanimity allows us to be very open-hearted and friendly, sort of warm and friendly with all beings. Now doing the sevenfold, seven limb practice here, I should say, just sort of grounding our practice here, just our Buddhist virtues, prostration, offering, confession, rejoicing, asking all holy beings to stay and to teach, and dedication. So again, prostration, just offering our signs of respect and devotion to the merit field, to Buddha Shakyamuni, founder of our religious view here, Buddhism. You can think of physical prostrations, singing praises, Dharani's mantras, and so forth. And acknowledging the sacred and showing respect in our attitude for our mind. Offering, and like Samantha Bhattacharya, we can sort of emanate in all directions beautiful flowers as an offering to Buddha Shakyamuni and all holy beings. Just sending up from our heart just beauty, whatever that is. So I like to do beautiful flowers, but just having just this positive mind of beauty we can sort of offer up to the merit field. Confession and rejoicing, so standing up, acknowledging and owning all your faults, character flaws, mistakes you've made, all the stuff in past lives as well. Again, this is a path of self-overcoming. So we're just sort of standing up to all sentient beings, all holy beings, and just saying, this is who I am, all my mistakes and shortcomings. I'm working on it, and I'm going to self-overcome. I'm going to let all this go and outgrow all of this, moving towards the light. So again, that's an old, I think, Bruce Cockburn lyric. If I'm casting a shadow, it's because I'm heading towards the light. So with our confession also comes our rejoicing. We've made a lot of mistakes and hurt ourselves and hurt other people, but at the same time, we've done a lot of good things. And even us being on this path of self-overcoming is an amazing virtue. But we can also rejoice in all of our good deeds and virtues, and especially those of other people in the world, people we know, people we don't know, in rejoicing in the goodness, sort of sublime beauty and goodness and love of all holy beings as well, all the light beings. Okay, sending up from our hearts here 2 things: beautiful square lion throne, a 8-spoked golden Dharma chakra, just requesting Buddha Shakyamuni and all of our sort of gurus, our Buddhas, Dakinis, and angels, and so forth. Please stay with us. Please, you just say, please stay with me in my life. Always be the light in my life. And teach. Please guide me, lead me, give me advice. So I'm just having the light here in the dark room of my life, but also just slowly leading me towards the light. I request that. Please always stay with us, and please always teach us the Dharma. And then we dedicate all of this virtue, good energy, towards the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Okay, from our heart, one last offering here, which is the, again, offering up the mandala, sort of purified universe, as an act of giving to Buddha Shakyamuni, representing all holy beings, the 3 jewels. Beautiful universe purified in our hands here at our heart level. The Vedic universe, so Mount Meru, the 4 continents, 8 subcontinents, and so forth, all beautiful possessions of a Chakravartin ruler. All beautiful things. So just sort of a purified, beautiful universe or cosmos in our hands that we're offering up here. We go, the ground sprinkled with perfume and spread with flowers, the great mountain, 4 lands, sun and moon, seen as a Buddha land, and offer thus, may all beings enjoy such pure lands. Om Hedam Guru Radha Mandala come near to Yami. Send forth this jewel mantle to precious Gurus. And upon doing that, again, golden light comes down from the heart of Vajra and Vajradhatu Ishvari. Just like beautiful golden sunlight into our body and bodies of all the beings around us, granting us blessings, making our mind going from a reactive state to affirmative one, being constriction to opening up, going from sort of a hate and sort of a resentful mind to just beautiful, joyful, loving mind. Oh, just like a closed flower opens up in the sunlight, you can just feel that. Great, great peace, contentment, sense of bliss and totality and joy. And we visualize a beautiful little diamond Buddha at our heart. And again, it can be just like the tip of your pinky finger here, or a little smaller, like a sunflower seed, or if you're really good at visualizing, a little mustard seed. Just where our most subtle mind is at our heart chakra, representing our Buddha nature, the emptiness of our mind, and the clarity of our mind as well. Those going together. That mind is nothing before it thinks, that it is just clarity and awareness. Or sort of naturelessness, so to speak. Doesn't have a quality, but it just cognizes a sheer awareness. And what is it sheerly aware of in this case is emptiness, a direct vision of emptiness at our heart. So this is sort of metaphorically or symbolically taking the form of a diamond Buddha at our heart. So we have that natural, the emptiness of mind is our natural Buddha nature, and the developing mind, developing Buddha nature, developing Tathagata Garbha, sort of the dependent origination of our path of sort of slowly working towards discovering that truth about ourselves, waking up to that sort of our enlightened state. That's again symbolized by this beautiful diamond Buddha at our heart. So we can call out to Buddha Shakyamuni, say, please, precious teacher, precious Buddha, is mind the synthesis of all Buddha jewels. Speech is a synthesis of all Dharma jewels, and body is a synthesis of all Sangha jewels. Please grant us your blessings of body, speech, and mind. This Buddha Shakyamuni starts to get really, really small, dissolving inward in the golden light into his heart, into the divine couple, Vajra and Vajradhatuvishvari. And then they get really small. Get about the size of a sunflower seed or mustard seed, a beautiful blue diamond, and they come to the crown of our head. Slowly enter sort of our crown chakra there. Just run down a central channel just in front of our spine, very, very slowly, like a leaf falling. Till they dissolve into the diamond Buddha at our heart and feel that they become one. So little blue Buddhas go into the diamond Buddha, everything gets blue for a second, then goes back to being clear diamond. And just feel that all the three jewels are one with us. All holy beings have dissolved directly their enlightened mind into our mind. Like water into water. You feel great, great joy and bliss here. And just focusing on that little diamond Buddha at our hearts. So it's coming out of meditation now. Short meditation there. Always try and remember the little diamond Buddha at our hearts, and know that that Buddha nature is always there at each moment, and it can never be taken away and never be polluted or broken or technically never even forgotten. You'll always have the karma lifetime to eventually sort of be able to access that. So that's sort of our divine heritage, so to speak. It's always important to know that that's always there. So may that be sort of a prayer for us. Okay, so this class number 4 in ACI Course 6, Diamond Cutter, is basically direct perception of emptiness. So in my little notebook here for notes, there's a number of pages. I want to sort of stay within the hour mark here, so about 40 minutes or so. Some of this might be a little bit of a retread from stuff I've said before. I don't know, but but then it hopefully goes in a little bit deeper for everybody. Okay, so just to start, what I mentioned before, it's good to know one thing I've always loved about Buddhism is, in Tibetan Buddhism in particular, but we're always given a map of sort of to give us a measure and sort of, I guess, the logistics to be able to get enlightened. It's not sort of this mysterious, magical thing that we can actually have directions and a path, and be able to have a teacher and a guide and be able to sort of show our progress, where we're coming from, where we're going, what it needs to take to get there, and so forth. So the path to enlightenment, I always say, sort of consists of 5 stages, I guess you could say, or 5, oftentimes called 5 paths, whatever. So we've got accumulation, path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, sometimes called path of insight, path of habituation, sometimes called meditation. So the path of seeing or insight is the idea of seeing emptiness directly, and meditation or habituation is the translation of the Tibetan word gom for meditation, which means habituation. So the definition of meditation in Tibetan gom is the Buddhist definition of meditation is familiarizing yourself or habituating your mind to a virtuous object. In other words, an object that's virtuous because it produces happiness, compared to habituating your mind or training your mind, which you could say habituating training your mind to a non-virtuous object. In other words, objects that make you suffer and make you unhappy. And then the last path is of no more learning. So at this path, you sort of transition into enlightenment or nirvana. So basically, the first part is, of course, accumulation. Path of accumulations, you're accumulating the merit, purifying your negativity. So we always say we need 2 things. To purify our bad thoughts, bad deeds, bad energy, and to accumulate lots of virtue or positive energy, spiritual energy, good qualities, and so forth. We're doing all this in training in our study and practice of meditation and emptiness, so shamatha and vipassana. And then once we're ready, we get to path of preparation. We're preparing to see emptiness directly. We're preparing to be liberated from samsara. We're preparing to wake up. So I guess it's like you've set your alarm. It's almost like if you were awake while you were asleep, it's like, oh, the alarm's, I mean, sometimes you have that where you just know, oh, well, my alarm's going to go off. It's 5 in, I have to get up and go to work. You're waiting the last 10 minutes. It's like, you're ready to wake up. Path of preparing. So a path of preparation is when we're actually to path of insight or seeing, is we're transitioning from a meditative absorption onto an image or concept, what they call generic image, or an intellectual understanding or experience of emptiness, to being a direct experience of emptiness. So we have a little picture. You've never met a long lost relative, let's say, oh, and you're talking this person, let's say on social media, oh my God, I didn't know I had a relative, let's say in Italy, in Florence, oh my God, I get to go visit the person. And I go, we're going to meet whatever, at the airport in Florence. And all I have is a picture. I've got my picture from social media or email or whatever, Facebook. I've got the person's picture. I've never seen them before, and the picture might be a little older than they are now. So I'm looking at it, on my phone. I'm like, oh, this is a picture of, let's say, my long lost cousin or whatever. I'm like, oh, and then you're in you get off the plane and you're looking, it's like, what's this person? That then I see it. And it's like, oh my God, that's the person. I go over and talk to them. And again, is it the same person as the photo? Maybe a little bit different. But the point is that the experience you get is far more richer when you meet the person in person rather than just having the text and the conversation online with the picture of the person. So that's sort of the analogy. And then it's getting used to this experience. The habituation part is, of course, being able to integrate this experience in your life till it becomes your main experience. At that point, you're in the path of no more learning. And at this point, you will reach arhathood. Like if you don't have bodhicitta, you will reach nirvana. And then you move from that state, if you're doing further training, let's say with highest yoga tantra, to full enlightened Buddhahood. So these teachings here, it's sort of like a little tiny quick glimpse of what we're talking about. So teachings here today are how to become a quote unquote stream enter when you enter the path of seeing, becoming an Arya, which is sort of a noble being. Arya means, so in other words, you are become a super person or beyond human, an ultra human, a noble being. You are no longer a human being in the strict definition, because you've seen emptiness. You're sort of emerging out of being just a regular samsaric being or human being. So you're becoming sort of a noble divine being at this point in Arya. So the stream enter is basically you're moving towards enlightenment. You're moving towards that. You're no longer going to be in a situation where you're taking samsaric rebirths, and you're moving there in sort of a definite, determinate matter, sort of inexorably towards enlightenment. So I remember Geshe Roach saying that it's, that the analogy, of course, we're using 2,500 years ago is becoming a stream enter. They don't have something like an escalator or an elevator. I guess they could have used stairs, but an escalator or the moving sidewalk at the airport or something is a good analogy. Like once you've had this glimpse of emptiness, it's like getting on this, you're never going backwards, you never stop, you're on your way out of samsara. So just like a stream in the old days, or even now, if you're a little stream in the forest and you throw a leaf on it or a little stick, you see it going downstream. This is you're on your way out of samsara. So there are three prerequisites to see emptiness. Number one, path of accumulation. So this is, So basically the three prerequisites here is basically, we're going to talk about the three paths: paths of accumulation, preparation, and then seeing. So again, the path of accumulation, accumulating the merit, the virtue, the good thoughts, the power, the positive energy to see emptiness directly. So that's based on true renunciation. So the three principal paths in Buddhism of renunciation and bodhicitta and wisdom realizing emptiness. Of course, we're talking about the sort of the foundation for all of this being the first path, which is renunciation. So there's two definitions of renunciation. One in Tibetan Yenjung, which means definitely coming out, and two, which is Rabtu Jungwa, which means really left. So renunciation, that's what we really need to renounce samsara. It's only if you have a mind of renunciation that you will try to be on the five paths towards enlightenment, that you will be collecting virtue, you will be purifying negative energy in the first place. It's because you have renunciation that you want to see emptiness directly. Obviously, if you don't have your renunciation, what's the point of meditating or seeing emptiness or trying to get out of samsara? It's because I understand what true sufferings are with the four Arya Noble Truths that I have renunciation. I understand what true origins are, where my suffering is coming from, that I have renunciation. So the first definition of renunciation is definitely coming out, which is the idea that you're definitely on your way out or coming out of samsara towards enlightenment. So it might have been Alexander Berzin, someone defined, I think I've seen this somewhere, but renunciation is kind of like quote, surfacing. So it's like if you're at the bottom of the ocean of suffering, you're sort of moving up. It's like you've got a life jacket or someone's giving you some kind of life preserver with air, and you're floating up to the surface. You're surfacing. Or even, of course, even the idea of waking up. It's just like I'm coming out of sleep. Really left. Second definition of renunciation, Rabtu Jungwa, is to really leave home or worldly life. Which means to give a major part of your time and mind to spiritual life. So Zasep Rinpoche, my precious Guru, always says that renunciation, the real good meaning renunciation, there's two that I like. One, Trungpa Rinpoche says that renunciation is letting go of holding back. which I just love that definition. So most people think renunciation means having to give everything up. So, I'm divorcing my partner, I'm giving up my fancy car, I'm giving up my fancy clothes, I'm going to live under the bridge, I'm just going to eat grass, I'm going to punish myself. And this means I'm a real Buddhist yogi or yogini if I'm doing that. It's, my mom's brought over my favorite birthday cake, throw it in the garbage. I hate this. I'm only eating like whatever, just like stale bread. This shows me that I'm renouncing worldly life. You can do that if you want, of course, but that's not necessarily what we're renouncing. When we're renouncing true sufferings, it means we're renouncing true origins, which means the ultimate thing we're renouncing is our self-cherishing and our self-grasping mind, which is what's producing samsara. So this is why you can get rid of all the superficial things and still be very much attached and hung up. I can end up being someone just living under a bridge, being all spiritual and thinking in my mind, I'm so pure, everyone's a bunch of dummies and so attached to worldly things except for me. I'm like this sort of Yoda character. And yet, if I'm not attacking the real root of samsara, my self-cherishing, my attachment, my self-grasping mind, then all I've done is just change costumes, basically from a worldly person to an ascetic, and I'm the same person deep down. So letting go of holding back means that I'm really letting go of sort of holding myself back from the real effort of getting enlightened. In other words, I'm committing to it fully. I'm really throwing myself in it. I'm quote unquote getting serious, like Aristotle used to say, quote unquote, taking life seriously. There's a good book on there, the Nicomachean Ethics or Aristotelian Ethics. How can I be a serious person, like a serious pure practitioner? That's what renunciation means. And this is really letting go of holding back and committing. So Rinpoche says that you're renounced when you want to practice Dharma. Like that becomes your focus. So rather than just like, oh, I've got free time, I'm just going to watch Netflix or go shopping or whatever, smoke weed and play video games or whatever people want to do, or I'm going to go golfing, I'm going on another vacation. I just got back from Palm Springs. Now I'm going to Mexico next week, running around doing worldly things. Instead of that, you're just like, no, I'm going to meditate or I'm going to study Dharma. I'm really going to apply myself. This is my free leisure time. So rather than choosing just worldly things, I'm going to choose spiritual things. I know that there is a question of relevance. There's a question of where I want to apply myself, what kind of karma I want to create. I want to create spiritual karma. So that's the idea of sort of really just renunciation being that I want to practice Dharma. So this is the path of accumulation. I also like what it says here, to leave home or leave worldly life. So there's that amazing quote by Milarepa, one of Tibet's greatest saints, where he said, to leave home is to accomplish half the Dharma. So of course, that's what he did. He left home. I mean, if it's an amazing life story. Milarepa is so inspiring, right, for us. But any great saint, you see this, a huge thing they make of their life is, at first I had to leave home. There's usually some, when you read life stories of saints, men and women, whatever, there's usually some kind of tragedy or problem or sort of personal issue they have, where they have to do almost a spiritual pilgrimage where they have to quote unquote leave home, or they're thrown out of home. They become an orphan or they're sick or thrown, whatever, this kind of thing. So it's this idea that I'm leaving what's familiar, I'm leaving what's comfortable, I'm leaving what's safe, and I'm being basically kind of thrown on my own. I'm becoming like a quote unquote refugee in my own life, so figuratively or literally. So leaving home really means that with renunciation, I'm renouncing my self-cherishing, self-grasping. I'm renouncing my attachment to what's easy in life, to what's comfortable. The 8 worldly dharmas, if I like material things, these are things that hold me into samsara, like material things. I want to be praised, I want people to like me, and I want to have a good reputation. But the second one is wanting pleasurable things, wanting comforts, wanting to feel good, this kind of stuff. So when you look at what constitutes your quote unquote home, it's my home. I like getting up in the morning, having my coffee, I like feeling safe and comfortable. It's about letting go of that on one level, and then you can be safe and comfortable wherever you are if you have true renunciation and be a real yogi or yogini. You're at home anywhere you decide to go to, because you've sort of let go of that attachment. Okay, so that's the kind of attitude you have to accumulate merit, purify negativity, to move into the second path of preparation, jorlam, or preparation path, which is gaining an intellectual understanding of emptiness. So from the study and contemplation, you become versed into intellectual or non-experiential view of emptiness, okay? So this is what we do. So in other words, what does it mean to have an intellectual understanding of emptiness? It means really understanding what that word emptiness refers to, what it means. What's the concept of emptiness? How can I meditate on emptiness? So people say, oh, you want to be a Buddhist, you want to be like meditate on emptiness. Okay. What's that? How do I do that? How do I meditate on emptiness? And usually given all these sort of complicated books. My first teacher, again, Kelsey Tarchin, always said his teacher, and I remember this is whatever, almost 30 years ago now, but he, I can't remember who it was now, one of his teachers. He studied with Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe and everybody. But I can't, it might have been someone else, like Yeshe or something, where he said, many people meditate on emptiness, few of them have the correct object. In other words, many people, again, and not being judgmental or, like mean spirited in that remark, but in other words, you have to get clear what the concept, like what the concept of emptiness is and how to meditate on it. So a lot of times people don't get that. They're sort of self-taught, or maybe they read an article on the internet or something and they start meditating. But again, they don't really know what they're doing. And they don't have a correct understanding of emptiness. The concept's wrong. So why is that wrong? I mean, well, I mean, it's just, you're just wasting your time in the sense that it's just whatever. I mean, just, it's just like having the wrong recipe to cook with, so it's, oh, I'm making this chocolate cake. The white stuff, oh, that's like salt, really should be adding sugar. You're putting tons and tons of salt in it. You bake the big cake, it comes out, you take a piece of your chocolate, it's just super salty, right? Well, it's because you made a mistake in the recipe. Is this the end of the world? Well, no, but I mean, you've wasted all that time. So you won't, then you have to bake a new chocolate cake, right? You don't use tons of salt, let's say use tons of sugar. Same thing with emptiness. We need to have a correct understanding of concept of emptiness so we actually get proper results, like our path actually leads somewhere and you just don't get more samsara or kind of get lost or confused. And oftentimes the problem is when people get wrong instruction or have bad teachers or no teachers self-taught, is that they get confused or they don't really go anywhere and then they quit. No, this Buddhism stupid. I did that for a few years and I'm off that right now. And then it's kind of like a waste of a big opportunity, which is sad, right? They've ended up quitting a project which would have had results had they had the proper instructions. So doing this is we start with looking at how concepts or mental images work. Okay, so there's a division here, they say, between 4 ways of seeing mental images. And basically the take home you'll see is how you mistake these mental images or concepts for real things, or take them to be basically not what they are. You're thinking that they're more than what they are. You're thinking they're not what they are. And this is where sort of samsaric confusion, delusion comes in. So the first way of looking at images, number 1, is sokche, which means collection quality, which is basically the whole is a collection of its parts. So then you see parts of something assembled into a conceptual idealized whole. So we can see this, that if we let's put together all of our utensils in the kitchen to make, let's say, a kitchen set of utensils, or like all different knives. We got all, and some might be broken, so you have the handle of a knife, and then there's the blade of a knife. You sort of put them together. Oh, I have a collection of knives. This is sort of what it means to be a knife. So out of a whole bunch of different parts, you can work up towards sort of a concept of what sort of the concept has dominion over, lays, or gives sense to what the parts are. Second one is rikchi, which is the kind quality. A quality is, in other words, this is being the opposite one, which is you're breaking something down into ideas or concepts, breaking the universe down into categories and concepts to understand it. So basically, like, if we have a whole bunch of collection of knives, we want to get at the idea, not sort of like David Hume would say, like we're basically using a whole bunch of pieces to make an association, to make a concept. It's the other way around. It's like, out of these things, subtracting everything, how do I get a general image of what this is, concept? So Edmund Husserl will call it, like what you call it when you're doing sort of phenomenology reduction, phenomenology we call free association. In other words, strip qualities or parts off till I get at sort of the essence of what the thing is. So what is a book? Well, okay, so I've got the book here. What would be all the different parts? Okay, like strip away the color. Can this still function as a book? Let's say it's red instead of brown. Yes. Does it have to be square? Well, maybe it can be rectangle. Maybe it can even be a round book. Okay. a lot of pages, maybe it's just even one page. So what does it mean to be a book? Well, let's say it just has to have pages that there's writing on, let's say is a bare thing. Then you get to something like the essence of what a book means. So when you see other books, you know what the concept is. I mean, there's many, I mean, we can get into, I mean, this isn't a philosophy of language class or something like that. There's many different ways of presenting this. But in general, that's what sort of a rikchi means. So in Tibetan logic, Buddhist logic, they talk about the idea of quality and characteristics. In other words, you've got the concept, the universal, and the particulars, okay? So if the quality and characteristic would be the quality means concept, let's say, of a Ford car, let's say Honda, right? And the characteristic is we see, in other words, every time you see a Honda, you see a car, but it's not necessarily every time you see a car, you see a Honda, of course, because it could be a Toyota or it could be a Kia or something else like that. So the take-home thing here is what's important isn't running around trying to figure out, studying philosophy or what makes quote unquote question of universals. This is like in Western philosophy, it's a huge issue from Plato all the way to today. I mean, everyone's still working on it. There's a big, I've heard many people say that basically, like Western philosophy, it's still a big debate on universals between Plato and Aristotle. In other words, Plato will say, in all different particulars, there's something separate, external to your mind, which is an idealized universal of those particulars, or what he calls a form or eidos. That is the basis of our conceptual life. Whereas, so it's external to you, but let's say Aristotle will say that you abstract the universal from particular things. The universal isn't out there; it's in my mind. Anyway, big debate going back and forth, and here we are, whatever, 2,000 years later, everybody's still fighting over these issues. So from more of a practical, spiritual point of view, it's if you want, you can run around and debate other Buddhist scholars, Khenpos and Geshes on this, but we're trying to be more sort of yogis or yoginis of find what's practical in this kind of information. So what Geshe Michael is saying is the question here, and he's sort of arguing the same thing here, is the question of what makes you identify something as something. So again, it's a question of aspect or a universal concept. How is that functioning? So what if, like, we have a concept of what it means to be a person? Well, how do you see individual people as this universal concept of a person? Okay, so we talked about that in a previous class of like when you see something as something, like in other words, conceptually, when it's universalized, when it makes sense as something, like, the duck rabbit, when I see something as an aspect. What's Geshe Michael was saying here in the notes is that what's important here is that this happens instinctually. Okay, so the question is, how is that done? Why is our conceptual life done sort of done kind of automatically for us? How do we create these categories? How do we see things as in a category or a group or a pattern, right? That's something you have to see. So German philosopher Heidegger always said, sort of in his criticism of phenomenology, a sort of new way of understanding it 100 years ago, is he would say, someone like Husserl will say, out of a whole bunch of multiplicities comes a conceptual unity called book, right? Like if I show you a series of perspectives of these things, they all look different, yet you all know what's in and of the same thing. Immanuel Kant calls this the transcendental synthesis of the imagination, that basically the function of the imagination Kantian system is that of all this sensory data, it gets organized, and in and through the data comes a unity of the object. So you can see the things that look different, but I know they're all the same thing. They're all of my phone. That's something my mind is doing by putting these appearances together, right? What Heidegger was said, which is interesting, is that this is always already done. Like basically calls it sense of being revealed or disclosed, that being in the world is such that things are always already appearing to you in a certain way. So I'm not having to organize these things intellectually at each moment. I'm living in a world, because of the language I speak gives me the sort of universal matrix, so to speak, like the conceptual matrix, that things are always already appearing as aspects. So when I see this, I see it as a watch. I mean, I always use my black watch here, but when I see it, I don't say, what is this? There's some weird black leather and a round thing, and it's making a ticking noise, and it is, let me see here, oh my goodness, it's a watch. I never knew that. You always see it as something right off the bat. And even if it isn't my watch, I will see it as something. Oh, someone else's watch. Or, oh, this is your watch. No, it's not. It's actually just a souvenir. It's a fake watch. It's just because whatever. I got this from someplace. I turn around and says Mexico or whatever. Oh, it's a souvenir. I see it. So just like Geshe Michael's sort of example of the famous pen being the chew toy, I always see it as a pen, right? No matter what, like you can break it down and to say, oh, there's that plastic cylinder in different colors. I can start doing that analysis, but I'm always, once I start doing that, I'm grasping at further labels. What's plastic? Plastic always appears, what's a color? These are all universals or structured conceptually. And then if this appears, like if I show it to my dog, it's a chew toy, right? Or maybe a baby, it'll see it as something to suck or something like that, right? So the point is that you are forced by your karma to see things in a certain way. Your karma is what actually supplies the conceptual overlay for your life, okay? It's supplying the aspect. So we have to have an understanding how this happens, how your mind creates these categories, grouping, quality, and characteristics. This leads to seeing emptiness. Analyzing and understanding this way of mentally imaging things is extremely important for seeing emptiness. This is the path of preparation. We are preparing to see emptiness directly. So the last two things, we talked about 4 different ways of seeing mental images. The last 2, it's what they call the dunshi, which is actual object mental image, and 4, the drachi, which is the word or mental image. So this is a big thing. Anne Klein's a really good Buddhist scholar. She's written a book called Meeting the Great Bliss Queen. That's great. But she studied with Geshe Wangyal, Geshe Sopa, a lot of great Tibetan teachers, and put out, she's still teaching, she's a Lama herself, but she put out a lot of good Dharma books in the 1980s, I think in the 90s. But she did one called Knowledge and Liberation, which is an excellent book. It's one of her old books. It's fairly scholarly, but it's a great book. And it is a book basically on this, showing sort of Buddhist logic and understanding the difference between Dunshi and Drachi. In other words, Dunshi being the mental picture concept, idealization that comes in your mind when someone names something you've seen with your eyes or apprehended logically or mentally recreating. And then the Drachi is mentally creating what you haven't seen or just heard. In other words, you don't have no experience. So there's basically a difference you can say. That it's a difference that's not made in Western philosophy, but it's a difference that they do make in Buddhist logic or Buddhist philosophy. And it's a pragmatist difference. It's the difference between mental images or concepts of things that you have experiences with or sort of know how they work, and then concepts you have when you haven't had the experience, okay? So they'll make a difference between, let's say, your concept of India, 2 concepts of India. So the Dunshis, we like, let's say you have a concept of India because you've been to India a lot. You've worked there, you got a visa, you lived there for a few years, maybe you married someone, you lived, and you're in Delhi, and blah, blah, blah. Compared to someone who's never been to India, their concept. So when you use the word, let's say it's 2 friends, I've lived in India, whatever, I love India, go every year. And oh, my friend here has never been, but really wants to go one day. So all they've done is read a few books and watch YouTube videos on India. So the word India means 2 very different things for these 2 people. The person that's lived there has both the Drachi and Dunshi. Like they can both look at India intellectually. Someone says, hey, why don't you read for fun this travel book on India? And you're like, yeah, well, it's a good book. I like it. So there's lots of parts of India I haven't been, but it's describing the places where I used to live. Yeah, it's not too, it's pretty accurate. They've left out X, Y, and Z, but then they have things, I never went to that part of town. There's a good write-up on it, right? So I can look at it intellectually, but I can also look at it experientially. Whereas the other person that's never been to India, they're only stuck with the intellectual side here. Okay, so what we want to do is through our practice, we want to move to the other. We want to be able to move from just an intellectual understanding of emptiness to having eventually a direct understanding, a direct seeing or experience of emptiness. But we also want to move on pragmatically to this level where we're getting glimpses of emptiness. We're getting more of an experience in our meditation of it. We're getting more of a dunshi, or sort of the mental or concepts that's more unified with the experience that works better. Okay, so pragmatically, there's certain concepts that we can use that actually have effects or work better in the world compared to other ones, right? Um, you, let's say if you're a car mechanic, the way you set up your car and work on it is very different than if you don't know anything about cars. Even things you might do to your car's engine to make it better, to have better gas mileage, or you do little things, just like with someone who's, when you show up at work, like, been a flight attendant for almost 30 years, the way I'm at work, we've got all new people being hired now, and you show them the ropes, how to work with things. You're giving them almost like recipes or instructions so they get the experience that you do. So again, when their concepts are going from intellectual ones to being more ones that are working, more sort of practical ones. They sort of track or fit better on the world, right? Okay, so okay. So the path of preparation is you must grasp what's going on with quality characteristics or concepts in particulars here. To grasp, when you look at objects there are no objects out there, just in your mind. So basically, one notes here, all you ever see are mental pictures that you mistake for the things out there. You never perceive a whole perfect object, clues, mental pictures. How you perceive into these clues depends upon your karma. So basically, the big problem that we're getting here, I'll just read a little bit more and I'll comment on it here. So Dharmakirti's a famous Buddhist scholar, yogi and logician here. His famous book on valid cognition, which is a commentary on Dignaga's famous book on valid cognition, Pramana, spends a lot of time trying to investigate why something is a particular kind of something. Like, how do you know a car is a car? Like, how do I understand how universals work? What about the particulars or the characteristics that end up suggesting to you or enacting or allowing to have a concept of things? How do we know this? So this, let me see, not about Sokchi's assembling parts of it. So basically, it's what the commentary here is suggesting, that what we're always doing, like, even though you think you might be, there's two things here. Our conceptual life, Buddhists end up saying it's not a question of assembling concepts out of particulars, rather it's the other way around. So in other words, it's not Sokchi but Rikchi, like in a sense that we're seeing particulars because we have the concepts first, which makes sense. And what you're getting at time is that you're always dealing with concepts or labels. So even like I was saying, when you start breaking things down from pieces, taking things apart in terms of pieces, each one of these pieces themselves becomes a concept, okay? So you're just, again, concepts and universals and particulars, the particulars themselves will become universal. So it's kind of like a bit of an infinite regress. They're dependent on one another. George Dreyfus has a great book on this very issue, Recognizing Reality, very, very good Dharma book, where he talks about that he says the Gelugpa traditions that they call quote unquote quasi-realist understanding of universals. So in other words, if we're understanding everything is dependent arising, that out of parts becomes a whole. The whole depends on parts separate from it. But again, the parts themselves need the whole to make sense. So for me to have a concept, I need particulars to put the concept on. But again, you'll never have one without the other. So it's fascinating idea. So we call it kind of like a quasi-realism that you have in the Gelugpa tradition. It's a big thing, sort of in Buddhist logic. And other schools critique this. Other schools, in George Dreyfus' books, he shows a lot of criticism of this from the Sakya tradition, where they say that there's a difference between your conceptual life and particulars. These things are separated. Anyway, it's a long argument. I'm not a Buddhist scholar. I'm not going to sort of embarrass myself by pretending I know this sort of in a really, really good scholarly way, because I don't, but I'm just giving you the reference if you want to go a little bit deeper here. So again, let me see here. It says, okay, so it's just the idea. It's interesting that basically, just sort of going on what it is before is, questions, how do I know what I know? How do I know things where they, things, how can I recognize them as being certain aspects or certain kinds of things? Well, I'm just getting particulars and clues, and then I'm seeing things as a particular concept or an aspect here. And this is done sort of automatically. And again, how is this done? Well, this is done as being forced upon you by your karma. So karma, what's interesting, I like this about, is that oftentimes when we look at karma, we're always trying to think of things just in terms of events, like, oh, something happened to me or something's happening. But really, we have to look at it more subtle way. What karma is actually giving you is how it is making your experience make sense or appear to you in one way rather than another. That's what karma really is how things are labeled or how things appear, how aspect, what things are for you. That's what's being forced on you. So the rikti, or the mental images, is precisely what karma is supplying to you. In other words, it's basically your mind itself is conditioned to see things a certain way and not another way. Okay, so if I change the karma, I will change my perceptions themselves. Perceptions or appearances, again, to your mind or aspects, are a question of these mental images that are being basically disclosed a certain way. And this is, of course, all according to karma. Now, where samsara is, the whole point of this, the final path of preparation, or Chukchi Dharma Supreme, is happens at the last one before you see emptiness directly. This is where you see what you're doing with the junji, or with the mental images. There's no object out there, but you are looking at mental images put together by some indications, by, there's certain particulars or certain data, then images, concepts are coming there. This is the highest state of a non-arya before you see emptiness directly. So for the first time, you directly perceive yourself creating and projecting deceptive reality, independent origination itself. You catch yourself creating relative truth. You realize directly what it is to be projecting for the first time. In other words, you perceive deceptive reality for the first time. Okay, I'll just finish here. So meditating on qualities and characteristics, you perceive relative truth. There isn't seeing emptiness, but you're seeing dependent origination. Okay, then you go, okay, so basically, what is the transition from the path of preparation, path of seeing emptiness directly? So this is excellent information here from Geshe Michael's commentary to Diamond Cutter. But it's also, I remember my first teacher, again, Kelsing Tarchin, talking a lot about this as well. So when you are on the path of preparation and you're meditating on a correct conceptual understanding of emptiness, because you're meditating on dependent arising, you're meditating on the three levels of dependent arising. You can see this, the more coarse view of dependent arising is causes and effects. When I get a little bit deeper understanding of dependent origination, it's wholes and parts, or sets, relationships. And the deepest, most subtlest understanding of dependent arising is that things are just mentally labeled, again, through words and concepts. So again, what we're talking about here, we're talking about concepts and particulars, right? So when you're meditating on this and you have this as an idea and you're meditating on this directly, the final part of the path of preparation, this is the last part of you just being a normal person before you flip into being sort of a higher Arya person, sort of unveiling your divinity, so to speak, is for the first time, you will see that you've never had a true, like a valid cognition in your whole life. In other words, what you're always doing is you're taking your conceptual life to be being true, independent of yourself. In other words, you take it to being absolutely true and real. I just don't see this as a watch, my concept of a watch. I think it's something independent of my own mind. I think that this is a watch, no matter who sees it. It's always already been a watch. Rather than it's a construct, it's something my mind's put together, okay? And again, if you want to look at disclosively, it's because let's say like I speak English, I'm born a certain time in history, there's a whole conceptual apparatus, just the logical apparatus from speaking, having an English grammar that's structuring the world a certain way. So the whole point of samsara is I don't see that I'm doing this. I think there's a separation between myself or my mind and these structures, when really it's just my mind. So that's what I see for the first time when I'm approaching sort of the end, or sort of, I guess, sort of the heightened state or the essence of the path of preparation. For the first time, I see dependent origination. I see everything as being labeled by the mind. I see this logical activity of the mind, the grammatical part of my mind, putting reality together conceptually. You know, Tsongkhapa says nominal reality by name alone. In other words, by words and concepts. I see this directly. So this is why I see quote unquote deceptive reality. This appears to be real, independent of me, but it's not. And for the first time in my life or lifetimes, I'm actually seeing that it's not real, that it's just my mind. This is just concepts. This is just grammar. So it doesn't have to be this way. Other concepts or other matrices, other grammars could see reality completely different. Other beings will see reality completely different. You know, dogs, cats, butterflies, whales, whatever, spirits. So which one is the real reality? What's the real reality independent of all these different grammars? Well, there isn't one. I mean, that's the whole point. It's emptiness or blank. It's the projections on it that it's creating reality. So that's a sense of you're seeing yourself projecting for the first time. You're seeing that. So what is the project? Like, you know, Heidegger says that, you know, human reality is projective behavior. Like not only is reality being disclosed or projected outside me, but I'm projecting myself in reality, creating reality itself by doing certain things, having a self, running around, having self projects. For the first time in my life, at the end of the path of preparation, I see this. I see this directly. And then you see, that's when you're just approaching that you're putting everything together to, in terms of dependent origination, conceptually through your mind. When I have now, path of preparation also entails that I have the mind of tranquil abiding, that I have the stabilization, total concentration. If I'm still meditating, see, I'm going from this more an intellectual mental image to more of an experiential image now at this point. And then if I keep going with my mind of total concentration, I flip over into the path of insight, the path of seeing. I now see emptiness face to face. I see an absence of all this. The true nature of all this is that there is no nature. It can be different. Doesn't have to be this way. In other words, there's nothing separate from these concepts or grammars. It's an absence that's being projected on. And so the problem is, I don't see that I'm doing this like in a normal everyday life. I don't see my everyday behavior, everydayness. Is my mind doing this? My mind creating reality? Well, now in the path of preparation, you know, my Vipassana practice is so good. I see this for the first time. I see emptiness. At this point, I'm a stream enter. I'm an Arya. I see that things can be different. I see that reality can be made and unmade conceptually. Okay, so that's the path. So now I know I'm out of samsara, right? And when you come out back into when you go out of the path of seeing, which is just momentarily see emptiness, come out of it. Now at this point, you're on the path of habituation, your path of, you know, meditation, sense that now, how do I integrate this into my life? How do I live emptiness? Well, for one thing, you've seen through the card trick. You'll never make this mistake again because you see everything as your mind. Ironically, you know, right before I see emptiness, I see the ultimate nature of conventional reality. Now, when I come out of emptiness meditation, see emptiness directly, I see conventional reality, deceptive reality for what it is. Things look separate from my mind, but I know they're not. They are just not, it's a nominalism. They are nominally imputed or projected as words and concepts. And as such, they can be different. They don't have to be that way. They're completely flexible. And this is the liberation. It's all my suffering is based on self-grasping, thinking that that is the opposite, that things are the opposite of how they are. They're independent of me. I have no power in them. They're coming right at me. It's an absolute immovable brick wall structure that can never change. And I'm just suffering from it. Now, all of a sudden, I'm liberated. I'm let out of the cage because it's like seeing through the card trick, seeing through the magic trick. You know, when the guy's pulling the card, I see he's put one in his sleeve. Well, I've seen that. Now he can't trick me. When I do this, I see through the card trick, but also I see the positive side of it pragmatically is I see how I create reality, through words and language and concepts. And if that's the case, what do I want to create? Well, what's next? Like, where do we take this? You know, this is, you know, I'm liberated now, but what's next? And this is path of habituation, living with it, and ultimately path of no more learning. Yeah. Okay, so I just have here, you go into meditation, mind goes to the form realm, sees emptiness beyond description. Of course, that's what it's talking about, the path of insight. Chula, Chu, Shakpa, water, it's like water going into water. Seeing emptiness, you can't frame a thought that would be, that you'd be experiencing relative reality, not subject or object. So basically, in the path of seeing, you know you've hit the path of seeing, there's no doubt, because the big thing is it is a non-textual uh, experience. And that's why, like, the point is that you are in a space, a spaceless space, or an absence of conceptuality or of language. So that's the whole point. You've left that behind. Like a friend of mine always says, being on the other side of the alphabet. Well, the whole point is there's no other side of the alphabet, but the point is you've punched through that. And you're just in the experience of directly seeing emptiness, which is the absence of inherent existence. So when you talk about it is when you come back down into conventional existence. So that's why you can't really say anything. You're in a quote unquote nonsensical space. But when I come out of it and I have words and concepts again, I can hint at it, point at it by using words and concepts. And you can see that's why people use different techniques, like in Zen or Dzogchen, pointing out instructions, or using poetry. There's many different ways, because that experience of emptiness, it overflows all of that. So it's always this thing. It's like it's the closest you get to subject and object being one. Of course, they're not. It's like water poured into water. Like I say, your mind, which is basically doesn't have a form, formless, and just sheer awareness or cognizing, right? Non-material cognizing, meditating on an absence of inherent existence. It's like space. So it seems like a subject and object are together. You know, of course, you're meditating on something nonetheless. But how do you describe that? How do you talk about that? It's just an experience. And it's the experience itself that liberates you, not the intellectual understanding of emptiness. But nevertheless, you can teach it. And that's why His Holiness Dalai Lama, there's a great quote, yes, where he says, emptiness, what is he said? He says it's not, it's really funny the way he says it. I'm not going to remember now. So it's kind of like an inexpressible experience, but it's not that inexpressible. Like, you know, it overflows words, but you can use words. But the caveat is that it's more than this, right? So that's why the best analogy, like Tsongkhapa says, is there's many ways of teaching emptiness. The best one to use is dependent origination, particularly that things are dependently origination through the imputation of names of words and concepts. That's the one that we want to use best. Okay, so that's enough for this class. You can see that it's a lot, and I have gone over time. I apologize. I hope that's clear. Again, send me an email if you have any questions or so forth, or if you, again, even if you find mistakes in my reasoning or mistakes in the subject matter, please let me know. I'm a student, not just sort of a student teacher, but a student. I always want to learn more of this stuff myself. Okay, so let's just take a moment just to dedicate this and blessings of all holy beings, the truth of karma and the power of a pure spirit intention, and all of our dharma wishes be fulfilled. And really, let's dedicate this merit towards really understanding emptiness, what it is, how I meditate on it, how I realize that, and may all of this good karma go towards all of us having an experience of going on the path of seeing emptiness directly, that we liberate all ourselves and sentient beings. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you the next time.